Hello, and thank you for joining me. I'm Catherine Roth. This is a presentation on the legacy of Henrietta Lacks, rethinking consent, justice, and equity for public health research. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Henrietta Lacks case and how it challenges us to rethink public health research ethics. Henrietta's story isn't just about the past, it's about how we carry research forward in a way that honors human dignity, equity, and justice. In public health research, we often balance two goals: advancing knowledge for the good of populations and protecting the rights of individual people. Core ethical principles, autonomy, justice, beneficence, and non-maleficence, as well as vulnerability, are supposed to guide us. The concept of vulnerability reminds us that some populations, because of systematic inequalities, face higher risks of exploitation. The Henrietta Lacks case exposes what happens when these principles are ignored. In 1951, Henrietta Lacks, a black woman receiving treatment for cervical cancer, had cells taken from her without consent. These cells became the first immortalized cell line, known as HeLa, and fueled countless scientific breakthroughs from the polio vaccine to cancer research. But while the world benefited, Henrietta's family lived in poverty, without access to health care, recognition, or compensation. Her case reveals the deep injustices that can occur when ethics fail. The central challenge in the Lacks case is informed consent, or rather, the complete lack of it and disregard of it. Henrietta's cells were taken and distributed without her knowledge, distributed and sold without her knowledge. As a poor black woman in the 1950s, she was especially vulnerable to exploitation in a medical system segregated as well as dominated by white male physicians. The benefits of her cells were global, yet unequally distributed, and her family was excluded from the rewards of her contribution. These failures expose how race, gender, and class intersect to produce systematic harm as well as generational trauma. So what can we learn from this case? First, consent is not just a form to be signed. It's a continuous process to ensure true comprehension, understanding, choice, and participation. Second, vulnerability is not an individual weakness. It's a side effect of systematic racism, sexism, and poverty. Third, justice requires that benefits be equitably shared with the communities who contribute research. And lastly, public health research depends on trust, and that trust is built through transparency and community engagement. Why does this matter today? Well, Henrietta Lacks' story isn't history. It shapes the way Henrietta Lacks' story isn't just history. It shapes the way communities experience healthcare today. First, the breach of trust in her case continues to fuel mistrust, especially among Black communities, towards healthcare institutions and research. This mistrust is justified and understandable, and it continually contributes to lower participation in clinical studies and greater skepticism about medical intervention. Secondly, the exploitation she endured is not unique. We see echoes of it in the forced sterilization of women of color, the Tuskegee syphilis study, and more recent global examples where vulnerable groups have been used in research without proper consent, education, and participation. And third, these patterns create ongoing disparities in both research, participation, and treatment. Communities most affected by disease are often the least represented in studies, which leads to treatment that may not fully reflect their needs. Henrietta's legacy reminds us that until equity, consent, and trust are built into every stage of research, these disparities will continue. To prevent future harms, we need revised standards for public health research. These include continuous and contextual consent, equitable distribution of benefits, and explicit protections for vulnerable populations. Community-based participatory research can shift power back towards historically excluded groups. Transparency about data is essential to rebuilding trust, and oversight committees must be diverse and held accountable. And above all, a feminist commitment to equity must guide research so that race, gender, and class no longer determine who is protected and who is exploited. When we imagine a more equitable vision for public health research, we have to move beyond the false choice between progress and ethics. The Henrietta Lacks case shows us that real scientific progress must walk hand in hand with justice. This vision begins with consent, understood as an ongoing process, not a single signature on a form. It also requires that the benefits of research are shared equitably with the communities whose body and data make the breakthroughs possible. Most importantly, it means seeing communities as partners, not subjects. Participatory research, transparency, and accountability transform research from something done to people into something done with people. A more equitable system doesn't slow progress. In fact, it strengthens it. When research is built upon trust and respect, the knowledge we create is not only more just, but more enduring. I had to include this drawing that I found in the research. In closing, Henrietta Lacks gave the world immeasurable scientific gifts without her consent. Her story is painful, but it also lights the way forward. If we commit to centering equality, dignity, and trust in public health research, we can ensure that no one else is ever treated as invisible or expendable or exploitable, especially for profit or in the name of progress. Science and justice must walk hand in hand, and Henrietta's legacy challenges us to make that vision a reality. Thank you.